Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great tonight. You know, it's been a beautiful day here in Kentucky. Had a great weekend, Matt, even though it's kind of hot. Got to go out on the boat. Had a good time with that. You can tell by my face that I spent some time at our neighborhood pool the other day. I got a tremendous sunburn on my body. I was only out for about an hour, but as you get older, for some reason, it just seems like I burn easier. So I'm a little bit miserable from that.
That's funny. You say that. I actually went and fried myself a little bit too crispy over the weekend as well. I was swimming. I was only outside for maybe 40 minutes or so, but I came out of there looking like a lobster.
Yeah, well, that's my entire front side. You know, I didn't get anything on my back because I was laying on my back at the pool, just lounging, and my entire front side is just red as could be, man. So paying the price for it, but drink a little bourbon tonight and some rye whiskey, and it'll all be better, right?
Yeah, get a little red on that face to match the tummy.
That's right. All right, so I do need to thank our sponsors, of course, the Stave Restaurant out there in Millville, Kentucky. We appreciate their support. Check them out online at thestavekentucky.com. Chef Kyle Klacka out there making some just great food. And then also 3 Chord Bourbon, our other sponsor. We appreciate their sponsorship as well. Check them out online at 3chordbourbon.com. They're making some great stuff up there. Ari Sussman, their master blender, is just a really good guy. Neil Giraldo, the owner, creator of the brand, another good guy, and was the lead guitar player for Pat Benatar, if you don't know. But check 3 Chord out, making some really good stuff. And then we also have some Barrel Society birthdays. Matt, we got James Rutherford, who was last week. And since last week was a redo of an old episode, we didn't think of it. Yeah, last week we had some issues with getting our guests lined out. And so this week we're thrilled to be back in the regular thing, man. So James Rutherford, we missed your birthday last week, but happy birthday. And this week coming up, Blake Dillon, Robert Burke, happy birthday to you guys. So
yeah, happy birthday, everybody. Sorry that we missed you last weekend, James, but we're back.
Yeah, that's right. We're back on track, man. Here. So with that said, Matt, we got a great show tonight. You would tell everybody who we have with us?
Absolutely, I do. We are back after taking a week off, and we figured we would really give one to you guys here, as we have joining us on the podcast this evening for us as we record, or whatever time it is that you are listening to it, the master distiller from Michter's, Mr. Dan McKee. Dan, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Hey guys, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, man, we're thrilled to have you on the show, and really excited to get you on here and hear what you have to say. So this is going to be a great time. So Dan, I think we talked last week a little bit before the show, just kind of some pre-show stuff, and I told you that Matt and I have a terrible tendency to forget about what we're drinking and just go right into a conversation. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick to my guns here and make sure we do it right. So we've got something poured up for this first round. And if you don't care, I'll just kind of give it to you. And if you want to tell everybody what we're going to be drinking on this first session.
Sure. So again, thank you again for having Michter's, and I'm very excited. But yeah, nothing like starting right into our first pour. Usually when we do these things, we start talking for about 15 minutes and then jump into it. But no, this is great. I'm looking forward to it. So the first one that we want to try tonight, this one's our Michter's Single Barrel Kentucky Straight Rye. So we have our US 1 lineup that consists of, again, the Single Barrel Rye, our small batch Kentucky Straight Bourbon, our small batch unblended American whiskey, and then we have our small batch original sour mash. So that's our US 1 line. But out of this, all of our ryes are single barrel. Rye has been a very important part of, Michter since it was resurrected back here in Kentucky during the 90s. So very exciting. We call it a Kentucky style rye. So as you know, for a rye whiskey, of course, you have to have that minimum of 51% rye in the mash bill. Right. So we're on that lower end, whereas, there's some just north of us into Indiana. There's some very nice high rise, whether it's 95% or so forth, very bold, spicy. But we like to bring that rye content down with that additional corn, the malted barley that provides a very nice balance of sweetness and that spice. It's very approachable. And coming in at proof is 84.8. And I love it. It's actually people ask, what do you drink most? And it's typically the rye. I drink my whiskeys neat, typically. I'm not a bartender, so I always kind of laugh at that. I let the professionals do it. So, even if it's a very hot day, it's gonna typically be poured neat and enjoy it. There's so much flavor and complexity coming from it. So,
yeah, and you said talking about the proof 84.4 or 84.8. That's kind of surprising on the nose because I think when you think of a lower proof whiskey, rye or bourbon, you think that you might be a little underwhelmed. I don't want to there might not be that flavor profile that's coming through on the nose. And that, I think the first thing that just stuck out to me is the fact that this does not smell when I think of an 84 proof or 80 proof whiskey, this doesn't smell anything like that to me at all. So
sure. Really well, I'll hear sometimes, I wish the rye, was a little bit higher proof, and I like my ryes higher. Every so often we've had a limited release, that barrel strength rye, and it's the intensity per se is increased and so forth. But I'll just say, as I've gotten to travel around as master distiller and have met so many great people, as they do say, oh, I love my ryes, but your rye is fantastic. And it's very approachable. A lot of people think back of rye whiskey so many years ago and how just hot, spicy, unmanageable. This actually goes so well in cocktails and really works with other ingredients. So that's the best part, is like when I'm at a bar and you have the bartenders telling you unsolicited that, oh, I love making the cocktails, whether it is the old fashioned or something like that,
Right.
it goes so well with it. And that's what I love about it. It's, and again, at the lower proof though, that spice profile, those peppery notes, you get, you still get that little bit of citrus in there, a touch of butterscotch. And then, again, it's starting to get that nice little presence of oak.
Yeah. Matt, what are you picking up? I see you. Matt's a rye guy, through and through. Yeah. So Matt, that's his thing.
Love a good rye. We all know.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. So Matt, what are you picking up on the nose on this one?
Mark, I think you hit it right there with saying that at 84.8 proof, you're not chasing around the nose. It's got some body to it. It's not subdued. The first thing I've really picked up is it's got a really nice presence of the rye grain. I pick up the rye spice, thinking rye bread. I get like a cardamom, little peppercorn, something a little herbal with it as well. But then it really lends its way to nice, sweet honey, a toasted sugary honey coming through with it. And that, I think the corn is really helping to play in with that as well as it comes down the backside of the nose. And then that the oak comes through to me as more of on the toasted side, like a nice toasty, warm marshmallow or campfire oak.
Nice. Yeah. It's funny, Matt, I was smelling this and it instantly reminded me, cause I always talk about the Topps baseball card bubble gum, when you open up that pack, and that's usually on higher proofs and either higher rye bourbons or on higher proof rye whiskeys. So that's what really surprised me, was that my initial scent on this was that same, kind of that bubble gum Topps baseball card kind of bubble gum that I used to have as a kid. So that's what surprised me in terms of the 84.8 proof, because usually on lower proof whiskeys, I don't pick that up, but I do get that sweetness, Matt, you're talking about. It came across as honey, I think, like you said, to me, it's that kind of like that bubble gum sweetness. But yeah, picking up a little bit of that spice as well on the nose. Just really surprised, by an 84.8 that comes across like that, Dan. I mean, that's really
nice. Mark, it's funny that you say the bubble gum. I pick that up, and sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy when I say it. But I'm like, that is one thing I do relate it to. But again, just kind of stepping back, Michter's it's all about quality. We have kind of this cost be damn approach. We're a privately held company.
Yeah.
So we do so many things, which, I know tonight we'll start to, we'll discuss, but just in the grains, we use corn, rye, malted barley, all non-GMO, US grade #1. So just starting out with the highest quality ingredients, for the grains, and it's something we're very proud of. It's when I came to Michter's, it was amazing to see that, rye was that flagship of
Yeah.
the brand, and bourbon, as it's become so popular and has overtaken. But it was really, if you go back, Michter's is, once it's been resurrected in Kentucky, it's gone through 3 phases. And in phase 1, when our owner and president, Joe Malioco, they were going around to other distilleries here in Kentucky. Remember, American whiskey was really at an all-time low.
You're
They
right.
were able to go around and really buy some high quality matured stocks that they wanted to emulate. And in the 90s, the first releases were a Kentucky Straight 10-year-old rye, and then also a 10-year-old Kentucky Straight bourbon. And so just knowing that as we've gone into phase 2 and phase 3 to where we currently are, just to know that we were a part of that resurgence of rye, because you are right. There are so many great ryes out there. And just to know that we've been a part of that, that's very exciting.
Oh yeah. So this, I think I saw somewhere or heard somewhere, are these the age on this? Is this somewhere like between 5 and 7? Is that right? Or is that
Yeah, typically between 5 and 7. So that's one of the great things. Again, being privately held, we don't have the shareholders to make happy. It's all about aging to a taste profile and not an age statement. So
Gotcha.
we're typically 5 to 7.
Okay.
It's just like our 10-year releases. They're not just 10 years in one day. They're much older. And we'll talk about that when we have that later this evening. But that's what's very exciting. We don't release until we feel those barrels are ready.
Yeah.
And it's that important, because if we're not doing it right, it only hurts ourselves. So
right. Yeah. So, and the mash bill it's undisclosed mash bill, but talking about it, I mean, it's what I would consider probably a Kentucky rye. So we're looking right around that 51% rye in the a barely legal rye.
Yeah, we don't distinguish we kind of hold the close to our vest, but
Sure.
but yeah, it is on the lower. And if you're experienced and you enjoy rye, you're going to see that. But again, there's a fair amount, but with that additional corn and so forth, definitely there's that nice sweetness and
Sure.
so forth. So
yeah. So let's talk about you a little bit. We've talked about the whiskey. Let's talk about you, Dan, and a little bit about your history, or a lot of bit. I mean, we don't limit ourselves in terms of time. We say it's about an hour long, but we've gone. When we had Fred No on here, he talked for an hour and 45 minutes, Dan. So we're not we're not going to tell Fred to stop talking. So Dan, don't feel obligated to stop. You tell us. But we want to know. Our listeners want to know about you. About your history, where you're from, how you got into the industry, and how you got where you are today.
Okay, well, I think talking about yourself is one of the hardest things.
Sure. Yeah.
But
before you say that, Dan, it's funny because I've been rewatching the series Mad Men. I don't know if you've ever watched the show or not, but it's one of my favorite series. And Don at one point was doing an interview with Advertising Age magazine or whatever, and the guy asked him, "Who is Don Draper?" And Don just looked at him and said, "I'm from the Midwest, and we were taught that it's just not polite to talk about yourself." So I completely understand that, right?
Yep. Well, and I am from the Midwest. I'm actually originally from Northern Indiana.
Okay.
I moved down here. I think, wow, it's well over 15 years ago now, and I had the great opportunity of joining the whiskey industry as a distillery operator at Jim Beam
Okay.
at the Claremont Distillery. And I was working third shift, and it's been I use the word awesome a lot, so bear with me. But it's been an awesome journey, and I can thank so many people along the way. But it started, yes, in at Jim Beam at the Claremont Distillery, third shift distillery operator. Doing it hands on, and what a special way to learn it.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
just from milling the grains, again, the mashing process, fermentation, operating those big beer stills. It was just a fantastic experience. And again, you're working with, people with 10, 20, 30, 40 years experience. You can't buy that in a textbook. You learn so many from whether it's, the boiler, all the peripheral equipment that supports it. It was just a great experience.
Yeah.
And at about 2 years, I had the opportunity to promote into supervision, distillery supervisor, again on third shift. But now this was at the Booker No Distillery in Boston, Kentucky.
Okay.
And I was there for another 7 years, worked with great people. And, again, you're making high quality whiskey, but with large volumes. So you were learning, again, all aspects, the grain, all the way, through the mashing, fermentation, distillation, but also the boilers, the dry house that handles the thick stillage, all those aspects of distilling. And you were getting, you would work with operators that, again, may have that 30, 40 years experience. And it was so much fun sitting back and listening to their stories. and
Sure.
and you learned a lot just that. And I've used this example several times, but the beautiful thing is to talk about the whiskeys, but the things behind the scenes of sitting inside a boiler with a senior operator, and he's taken time out of his day to explain the inner workings of the boiler. As that's not glorious, but that's what helped build my career, is
Sure.
learning those aspects of things like that. And then on top of it, of course, you do have the distillery portion of it. And that's the claim to fame there. But it takes understanding all of the other aspects. And that's what I love about this job. I'm very production oriented, and it's very exciting. There's never not a challenge, and
Sure.
there's never a day you don't learn something.
So you spent a lot of time there at Beam, and then you transferred over to Michter's. When was that?
So I joined the Michter's team in December of 2014. So I worked with, Willie Pratt was our first master distiller at Michter's.
Okay.
When he retired, Pam Heilman became master distiller. She was originally from the Jim Beam at the Booker No Distillery also. She was the distillery manager. And she at some point had left to join the Michter's team to help build the new distillery. And sometime down the road, I actually was calling her to. She was very instrumental in me going back to college and finishing a degree. And so I was calling her. I hadn't talked to her for a long time, and I was calling her to thank her and let her know I actually finished after so many years. But we got talking, and then shortly after that there was an opportunity as a distillery manager. Again, they were in the process of building the distillery here in Shively, Kentucky, and I thought it was a great opportunity. Michter's was a very reputable brand, young and growing, but very
Sure.
reputable. And having an opportunity after 9 years of third shift to be able to go to first shift and actually,
Sold.
yeah, exactly. But not only that, the part of, at that point, 9 years of distilling, that's my passion. That's what I love. I found the job that I love driving. I drive an hour to work each way.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and people ask you, doesn't the drive get old? And I said, the drive will get old when I stop enjoying my job. And it's still true to this day. And so joining the team, and then also I think I would say every distiller would love the challenge to be able to start a new distillery from ground up and be a part of that and help oversee the construction, hiring your distillery operators, and just all of that. And then actually day one, mashing, fermentation, and then,
Sure.
that first, I still remember that first distillation. It was such an awesome experience that, it's possibly a once in a lifetime moment to see your beer still go online for the first time. And it was a very rewarding to be there with Willie Pratt and Pam Howman to do that. And of course, Andrea Wilson, our master of maturation, and the team, but it was very exciting.
And then you took over then as the master distiller in April, right? 2000. Wait, you got to check the certificate.
Yeah, I did have to look the other day because I don't know if the journey for the last 2 years is a textbook for a master distiller, but yeah, it was in the April of 2019, then started off pretty wild. It was
Sure.
becoming accustomed to the job and doing a lot more interaction with the whiskey lovers of the world. And I started by late fall, I was starting to travel a little more and so forth. And then all of a sudden, of course, we all know by spring of 2020, things shut down. But so it's, and that's the other part of it is as part of, I know Master Distiller is to go out and have speaking engagements and promote the brand. I am still very production oriented. I'm here every day. I didn't work from home. So for the last year and a half, that's, I come to work every day and it's, and that's what I love about it. Again, that's the excitement of the job. There's new challenges every day. And, our goal is, as our president, Joe Meliocco will say, our goal, whether we're doing it or not, is to make the, greatest American whiskey, and that's that's what we're striving to do every day.
Yeah. So Matt, let's get back and talk a little bit about the palate and the finish on this one before we run out. We never run out of time, but
let's never run out of time. Always got time.
That's right. So let's talk about that. What are you picking up on this in terms of the palate and the finish on it?
I am really surprised at how heavy the palate hits right at the front. The rye is right there. It's like right on the front of the palate. I just get a ton of spice, a ton of heat, a lot of peppercorn. That cardamom comes through. And it's really unique. And I think a lot of the work in the mash bill comes through with this in that it doesn't leave my palate completely burnt up. It softens, and the corn and the barley come through really well at the end to really give it a nice longer, softer finish than just this really great spice. And I love the spice. I mean, I love rye for a reason because it's often has so much character, and this certainly does. But I think the corn and the barley, the lower proof in it, go a long way to really balance it out, give it a nice sweet finish with like good honey on it. There's a little bit. I pick up some herbs too. I get like some mint and some dill with this one as well. But also it's got a sweetness, like a honey and a caramel coming through with it, and a nice touch of the corn and the oak as well.
Yeah, and Matt, like with the nose, I'm surprised. Two things that really surprised me, I think, was the amount of rye spice that I got off of this. I don't think I was expecting that. Just knowing that it was a lower rye. I wasn't anticipating that much spice, like you said, Matt, on the initial taste. Not that it was overwhelming, but it was just it was a very pleasant surprise to get that. And then the finish, I'm really surprised at how long this finish continues. At least for me, I can still feel it 20, 30 seconds after I drink it. I can feel that nice tingle on my tongue from the rye. And I think for an 84.8, just was not was not expecting that at all, Dan. So that's very, very nice. And this is something I can see, I hate to say in introductory rye, but when you're talking to people that don't drink a lot of rye whiskey, or they're not really that familiar with it, you don't want to throw them into, like you were talking about earlier, at the 95.5s, where you're going to get a face full of spice and feel like you get punched in the face maybe sometimes. You want something that's going to be a nice transitional, especially if they're a bourbon drinker. And I could see this one just fitting that bill just perfectly.
Yeah, again, everyone's palate is so different, what we enjoy, but we have this Michter's house style where we're looking for a very rich whiskey, complex, very a nice warm mouth feel. And then what I love about our whole portfolio is our whiskeys are very smooth. So, that very smooth finish. And as
Right.
I always joke, as I continue to get older, I don't like making faces when I take a drink. And that's what I love about it. I mean, there's not like a nice Sunday evening having a neat pour of rye and just kind of, relaxing and I think that's what's great. But there is that flavor profile, that richness that people enjoy. And there's to me there's a time and a place for the smack you in the mouth, type
Sure.
whiskeys.
Yeah.
But to me, as a drinker, as one that you want to sip on and so forth. Yeah, this is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one other question. Oh, Matt, I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to agree with you, Dan. I think it has a lot of character, especially for the lower proof. A lot of times when I look at something with a lower proof, I'm often picking up predominantly on one or two different notes that really shine through or come through in something. And that's often it. It's oftentimes
Right.
left a little flat, or it doesn't have a nice finish that carries with it. You're left kind of wanting a little bit more. But this has a lot of character. It's got really, really great spice from the rye. There's no doubt that the rye is in this one. I love
Yeah.
that immediate hit from the rye right up front on the palate, and then the smoothness as it lends its way into the finish. It's got a lot of character. It really drinks well.
Well, thank you. I mean, when you were given the descriptors, I wrote them down so that I can use them. No, no, but thank you very much, though.
Matt's our master taster here at the Bourbon Life. You can tell I'm more of like the caramel vanilla guy, and Matt's the guy that gets it right all the time. So I was going to ask you another question about this before we wrap up the first session. Your rye this is single barrel. That's kind of surprising. I think you would anticipate. I think of this kind of maybe as an introductory type of rye, like I just said. And you think maybe it's going to be a small batch, collection of other barrels blended together. So what made you all decide, and what drove that decision? I'm just curious to make you all say, hey, let's just do our baseline rye. Let's just do it as a single barrel.
Yeah, I mean, the decision, to be single barrel with the rise was made well before I joined the company, but it was just something that they felt was special. All of our products are either single barrel, small batch, and to be that single barrel, you have to have very high quality, consistent barrels, and
Sure.
and we do, and so it was a nice way to present that rye. And small batch to us, as there's no legal definition of what small batch is, it just truly needs to be smaller in your larger batch. But we take small batch serious, and our batches are the equivalent of 20 full barrels. So just like the single barrel, again, you have to have very high quality, consistent barrels
Yeah.
to have consistency through your batches. But it was just everything that we do, um, you know, for each expression, it's about what best presents that spirit. So, whether it's later we can discuss we do a skillful chilled filtration. That's
Okay.
a topic that people will debate all day long.
Right.
But
Right.
I always look at it as I don't think it's a debate, because I feel that we're taking our whiskey. We have different filtering protocols for each expression, and bringing out the best qualities of that whiskey to bring to the consumer. And to me, that's what it's about. We don't want to. It's not about just changing it. Oh, it has to be this, but we want to bring those best attributes, because there's so many different compounds in a whiskey that some overshadow. The heavier ones, the larger chains will overshadow the smaller chain molecules, and so forth. And so we've done so many, for example, we've done so many different filtrations, testing to see what best represents, like, say, the rye. And how we filter the rye is different than how we filter the small batch, Kentucky straight bourbon. And
Okay.
I think that's what's special. So whether it's the grains, the amount of people ask, oh, how did you determine that proof? Well, the team felt that was the best way to represent the rye. And then in that single barrel format, we're like, man, these ryes are truly special.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I'm just surprised all around by this. I mean, I really am, Dan. So this is a great rye.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Matt, what about you?
Absolutely. Flagship rye.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap up the session. We're going to take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more with Dan McKee, the master distiller at Michter's. Everybody just sit tight and we'll be right back. Hey, Bourbon Lifers. When you're out hunting for those hard-to-find bottles or just enjoying the distilleries of Central Kentucky, you're going to work up an appetite. And when it's time to refuel, we suggest that you visit our good friends Rebecca and Eric Burnworth at the Stave Restaurant. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, close to Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, the Stave Restaurant is just off the beaten path, nestled on the banks of Glens Creek. With a newly redesigned menu, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day featuring an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. You can take our word for it. The food alone is worth the trip to the Stave. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. And you can even purchase bottles of bourbon to take home with you while you're there. Make sure to follow the Stave on Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky, or visit them online at thestavekentucky.com to stay up to date on everything that's going on. The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise, right here in the heart of bourbon country. All right, everybody, welcome back for the second round or second period or second session or whatever you want to call it of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me still in the Bourbon Life Studios, my basement, my good friend, Matt. Matt, how's it going over there?
Hey,
out
Mark.
there.
Yeah,
All the way out there in the other room.
That's right. I am. I'm in is this the north wing, the west?
Something like that.
Which quarter of the?
I think you're in the central location. You're like in the central area.
Yeah, I'm in the central.
I'm kind of in the
something.
Yeah, I'm in the east wing over here, I think.
Anyway, I'm doing great, man. It's good to be back recording again here in the Bourbon Life Studios, and we've got a great guest with us this week. We've got Dan McKee, the master distiller at Michter's. He's back for round number 2. And before we do that thing we always do, Dan, what do we have poured up?
I love this show. I love that we're just right away, boom, boom, right into the
that may be our claim to fame here. We've got whiskey to lips in under 4 minutes in segment number 1 here. So
yeah,
we may not do it well,
always.
We're at least
it always helps. Let's get the listeners drinking so that they can listen to me. So maybe that is the correct way to do things moving forward. But no, love the next one to share with you guys. It's our Michter small batch Kentucky straight bourbon. This one comes in at 91.4 proof. To me, this is just I always say it's a very nice classic bourbon. Again, it comes in, you're going to get a little bit of that nice rich caramel. We like to say there's a nice balance of vanilla. You're going to get some of those stone fruit characteristics.
Right.
And then start it's still between that 5 to 7 years, but a nice amount of, smokiness with a nice little oak finish. And, you can drink this one all day. This one's, it has beautiful color. If you
it really
swirl
does.
it around in your glass, the legs, the viscosity's there.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely clings to the glass. There's no question. There are times where I wish this was video so people could actually see what we have here, but they'll just have to take our word for it.
Sure. No, I love this as a bourbon. You can comfortably sip on this all day long. This is a very nice one.
So again, this one's the 5 to 7 years chill filter. We'll talk about that here in a minute because you mentioned that a few minutes ago, so we can get into that a little bit more detail. And then again, mash bill undisclosed on this one. Any guesses? Any range? That you can 70 something percent somewhere.
This is that part where I just say yes. It has corn, rye, and malted barley in there. I think you can tell with the sweetness. There's a fair amount of corn in it.
Sure.
Again, I do definitely have a sweet tooth. But I do love how as it comes across your palate, and we'll talk about that, but I love how it comes across. It's sweet, and then and then it finishes with that nice amount of oak on it, and that's what I truly enjoy with the bourbons. But in between the caramels, that vanilla notes that you get, it's
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah, Matt, what are you picking up on this one in terms of the nose on it?
It's got a nice oaky, smoky nose on it. Definitely,
Yeah.
I picked that up, Dan. But I get the corn coming through really sweet as a baked corn, like a nice hot buttered cornbread is what is really coming to mind for me, like right out of the cast iron skillet, right out of the oven. Just that nice aroma of good baked, fresh cornmeal on this one, like freshly milled. You get a really nice nose of that, and it's got good vanilla on it as well. The caramel is coming through, kind of all the typical notes that you would get from a really great classic, like flagship standout bourbon. And this is kind of like what you would come to expect from a really great all around nose on a good bourbon.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, I agree with that. It's funny because you took my line, man, caramel and vanilla.
I know, I had to beat you to it.
You took those because that's what I'm getting, some stone fruit, like he said. But it's funny because I was picking up that a little bit of that. I don't know if it's a oaky, maybe just more smoky type of aromas coming out of the bourbon itself. Not so much maybe the oak itself, but maybe just kind of a toasty or smoky type of an aroma coming off that. The sweetness, like you said, Matt, from that corn coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, you can tell Matt used to work in the food industry and also he worked at a bakery. So he has this incredible array of taste and aromas and memories and things that he can relate his rye and his bourbons to. So it's always good to be able to hear what he says.
Saying it confidently enough. Say it confidently enough. People will believe you. So that's been my strategies thus far.
So Dan, we talked about you a little bit in the first session. So let's talk about Michter's itself. Let's talk about the brand. I mean, it's got Michter's as a history. I mean, there's quite a bit there. So you want to unpack that for us here and take your time. We're in no rush.
Sure, love to. Michter's has a very long and rich history. Before it was here in Kentucky, it actually dated back. The distillery in 1753 was known as Shanks. John Shank, a Swiss Mennonite farmer, began distilling rye whiskey. And of course, like all whiskeys back in that time were rye whiskey, but that carried through into the 1800s. The distillery was sold to Abraham Baumberger, so it became Baumberger's. That carried through to 1919 with Prohibition, and like most distilleries, shutting down. And then once Prohibition ended, the distillery reopened. It changed hands several times. By the 1950s, a gentleman named Lou Foreman eventually became the owner and renamed the distillery Michter's after his two sons, Michael and Peter. So if you combine those, that's where we get Michter's. It's always enjoyable to hear people's interpretation and how they say it, and whether it comes in with that strong German accent or something. But it was after his two sons, Michael and Peter. So
Michter's is a better name than Peetles as well.
Yeah, we can go ahead. Yeah, I agree. Michter's sounds much better, man.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Unfortunately, by 1989, though, again, with the American whiskey industry really, suffering and being in at an all-time low with sales and so forth. Unfortunately, the distillery went bankrupt, abandoned all the labels, trademarks, so forth. And then in the 90s, our current owners, President Joe Malioco, and a very good friend and mentor of his, Richard Dick Newman, which would have been like CEO of Austin Nichols or Wild Turkey back in the day. Very, a legend in the industry per se, but he was a very good friend and mentor of Joe Malioco's. And they, the decision was made to, they went about and acquired the brand, all the labels and so forth. And Joe actually had experience with Michter's back in the late 70s. on the distribution side of things, it was his job to sell these little King Tut miniatures. And so again, he was very familiar with the brand. So working with Richard Newman, the decision to resurrect the brand here in Kentucky was made. And they entered into what we call phase one. And again, that's where they were able to go around to other distilleries here in Kentucky and purchase very high quality whiskeys that they wanted to emulate in the future. And you're going to see those whiskeys now in our upper marks, our 20, our 25. And if you had the opportunity, you'll know that they're very high quality whiskeys. They're, a lot of times you'll hear people say with the 20-year, it's one of the best whiskeys they've ever tasted or enjoyed. And I think that's such a compliment from that time period. But
Sure.
So that was phase one, and thankfully things were going well. I mentioned the first releases were the 10-year-old Kentucky Straight Rye and Kentucky Straight Bourbon. In early 2000s, we entered into what we call phase two. They went to another distillery here in Kentucky with our mash bill, our proprietary yeast, our specifications. And as Joe will say, kind of like a chef using another chef's kitchen. So they produced to our standards. And so in phase two, thankfully, went very well. And then now we're currently in phase three here in Shively, like a city within a city of Louisville,
Right.
in Kentucky here. It's our main production facility. We have the distillery, one on-site warehouse. We have the processing department that prepares the matured whiskey for bottling. We have our administration building. We have several off-site warehouses. In Springfield, Kentucky, we have 205 acres of farmland that we are currently working with a local farmer to grow like some grains, corn, rye, barley. We also have some warehouses there. And then we also have some other warehouses throughout Kentucky. So it's very exciting. And then in early 2019, the Fort Nelson distillery came online. That's our visitors experience center, and that's downtown Louisville, across from, let's say, Louisville Slugger Museum. It's a beautiful location, and that's actually has our craft distillery and the bar at Fort Nelson, and it's a great experience. The team down there does a wonderful job. And a little history there, which is truly special in professionally and personally. The pot stills that are used down there are actually from the Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania distillery. When Michter's was in Pennsylvania, they were handcrafted by Vendome, which is a local company here in Louisville that made these stills in 1976. So to have them here at the distillery, thinking about all the other great distillers before me, and right. It's just an honor for myself and the team to be able to continue making whiskey on that system is pretty amazing, and again, awesome.
No, that's really cool. So phase one is, as you refer to it, it's basically going out. You guys are sourcing barrels from other distilleries here. Were they all in Kentucky, or was it all over, or was there?
Yes, here in Kentucky.
Okay, but we can't say who or what.
No.
I know there's rumors. There's rumors out there on those ones that are that 20 and 25-year-old, and there's the rumors out there what it could be, what it might be. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's heavily sought after. I don't deal on the secondary market, but obviously everybody is familiar with that. Sure. A lot of people see what it goes for, and it is. I mean, it's crazy, but people want that juice and that old stuff, and you guys are obviously putting out what people like. So that's pretty cool to see, I'm sure.
So Dan, what was the process like going from phase one to phase two? So in phase one, you were releasing 10-year product under the Michter's name, and then phase two, you were releasing your own product. Is that correct?
Well, the phase two
kind of
would have been
phasing out the earlier source stuff and bringing your stuff into it as well. Like what was?
Well, the phase one, again, being the older and even still around to this day. going into phase two, again, having that distillery here in Kentucky produce for us in those
Yep.
to our standards. Now from phase two to phase three, I just want to, say that our goal is to continue making, that high quality whiskey. So our goal is to continue what we're doing. So it's either continue what we're doing or make it better. We're still using those same production standards, those same proprietary yeast, those same practices. And so that from two to three, because people ask that, from phase two, now you're making it. Our distillery came online in August of 2015.
Okay.
And they're like, well, what do you expect? And we always say we expect that same high quality whiskey, again, using those same yeast practices, mash bills, and so forth.
So Dan, are we seeing any what we're drinking tonight? I'm just curious. Are anything that you guys have distilled there on site? Any of that product in these products yet, or are we still not to that point?
So I will just say, again, that the distillery came online in August of 2015. We aged to a taste profile,
I got
and
you.
we release when we feel that they are ready. So it's very possible, but
Yeah.
So it's exciting times at Michter's.
It is very exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting to see.
I've been with Michter's now a little over 6 years, and just to see us, we were under 10 employees when I hired in, and now we're over 60 employees.
Wow.
With all of our different properties. But it's really amazing. We were, I believe, under 20, exporting to under 20 countries, and now we're well over 60, and it's it's amazing to see the growth. And of course, we have so many people to thank from that, from the people in the industry that promote us, and the bartenders and the consumers. And and that's the other thing. I was asked earlier today about marketing. You don't necessarily see us on billboards and big TV ads. It's for us, it's building those relationships, and
Right.
and I think that we've done well at that. I've, just myself personally, just in the last few years, I've made so many friends. It's a pretty amazing part of what whiskey, the industry, does.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, I love it. I'm a lifelong Kentuckian, but I'm just blown away that when you meet and talk to people in the industry, how open and accepting and helpful everybody is to everybody else. It's really, it speaks volumes for the industry itself. That Matt's favorite saying is that what is it, Matt? Raising tides raise all ships.
Yeah, rising tides raise all ships in this industry.
One thing I want to say, and hopefully you'll find this funny, but my first 9 years on third shift, and then when I had the opportunity to come to Michter's and just working in a different capacity, it was eye-opening to see the passion people have for the whiskey, and I'm grateful I've been able to experience that. You kind of, when you're on third shift, you you go to work, you come home, you sleep, and then you pick your child up from school and go to sports and enjoy it. But it was just coming to Michter's and really seeing and embracing the relationships that we hold so dear to our hearts here at Michter's.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And again, that's one of the other reasons I truly enjoy my role here at Michter's is seeing that.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you in the first session, I forgot to do this. So you work with Pam at Beam, and then she comes to Michter's, and then you come over to Michter's, still working under her. And if I have it correctly, I think she was the first female master distiller after Prohibition. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's it been like? I mean, you worked with her for years, and now you're following in her footsteps as master distiller. So what is it? Is there pressure to that? Is there excitement? I mean, what's the combination of things that go on with that?
Well, I mean, there's always pressure, whether it's following Pam or working for Michter's. Again, that that goal that is still there is to continue being successful. But no, I have a great relationship with Pam, and I've been able to experience as a supervisor all the way. We still talk. She'll probably get mad at me for saying this, but she had a birthday just a few weeks ago, and of course I sent her a nice arrangement of flowers and so forth, and
Yeah.
we talk all the time. She's still there if we're ever having an issue, or again, quite honestly, what I love about it is that thankfully we're doing well, and I actually can call and just have a very nice
Sure.
conversation.
Mhm.
But it is a lot of pressure because people enjoyed Pam. Um, she was, she's a great person, and
Sure.
she brought that same passion that hopefully I'm bringing to, and I feel I am. But Pam had that passion and truly loved making whiskey, and I learned so much from her. I always say I learned so much from everybody, but she definitely was instrumental in my career, and I owe a lot to her.
Yeah.
So
That's very nice. Very good answer. That's really nice. So no, I mean it is. I mean
well,
it's
I hope you can tell just in the voice. It's honest,
it's
and
honest. Yeah. I mean
it's
yeah.
she actually, as a supervisor working for her, she was very demanding. Like during the middle of the night, if you had a production issue and she came in the morning at 7 o'clock, you know, she wanted the answer, and it was not okay just to come, well, we're experiencing this. Well, why? You better have like 20 reasons why, like, and she made you be more thorough and really forced you to learn. It's because you knew that you couldn't go in there with, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it made you investigate and just made you better.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, that's good to know. So, thanks for being so honest on that answer too. That was really nice. So, back to the whiskey here. Let's talk about small batch. You mentioned earlier we talked about the single barrel rye. This one is your small batch bourbon. I think you mentioned earlier 20 barrels or less. Is that right? Is that what you said?
It's the equivalent of 20, full barrels,
Okay.
and so that's the size of our equipment. People, so you can. It's not like we have some big tank and then we're just saying we're putting that amount. Really, our tanks really only hold that much. But yeah, again, it just forces you to have very high quality barrels. I mean, we have a very um, our quality standards are very high. If barrels come in, we don't have, if something unfortunately is wrong with them, we will discard them. Just like with our distillate, because of the small batches in the single barrel, if something's wrong with, let's say, today's distillate, we're distilling today, we come in tomorrow, we'll collect samples, and then we'll run it through its quality control. So the first sample will go on the gas chromatograph mass spectrometer and measure certain compounds that we feel are very important to the distillate. And then we also do the sensory portion of it. So it's kind of the science and art of
Right.
it. And we have a great team assembled for the sensory panel, over 20 employees. Both the science, the art portions of it have to pass it, and then we'll give the warehouse the green light to begin reducing it to that 103 barrel entry proof. But if for some reason one of those fails, we actually reject that distillate for the day. We would put it in totes and send it off to be repurposed into fuel ethanol. So people are like, are you serious? And it's like, yeah. And it doesn't even necessarily that it was bad distillate. It just didn't fit our profiles because, again, if you think about it, at the end of the day, that single barrel or small batch, it's
Yeah.
just not going to be right. So
Right.
thankfully, I always say, because I'm still here talking, it doesn't happen very often, but that's the same quality control we have in the processing department. If a barrel comes in, and those processing operators are really that last line of defense, of they're doing their quality control tests and sensory and so forth. And if they pick up on something, they bring it right to our attention. We're all fully engaged, but that's so important to have such skillful team members to be able to,
Sure.
find that. So yeah, we'll reject it, and the same thing will happen.
So you've got these small batches that you're blending up here. So I'm assuming, because some distilleries, they will blend their barrels and they'll just kind of end up at wherever they end up. It's like, okay, we're going to take these barrels, we're going to blend it, and they're going to guide our tasting, profile. But with you guys, I mean, you're blending to a specific profile with each batch. You're trying to match batch after batch. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We want it to be as close as possible, and that's the beautiful thing about it. And you're throughout your warehouse. Our warehouses that we use are 4 floors. They're heat cycled warehouses. We like that 4th floor to promote consistency of the aging between the floors. It really tightens that variance. And, you're looking for barrels that, you're looking at their key characteristics so that you know what, how much of what to put together in that batch. And we're truly looking to make it very, increase that continuity and continue that through each batch.
Yep, that makes sense.
Well, let's get back to that batch here.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, you read my mind, Matt. I was just
not to cut everybody off, but let's talk about some bourbon.
Talk about it, Matt. All right, Matt, what are you getting in terms of on the palate and the finish?
This one I think plays really well with the rye because I find that their palates are almost opposites. Where the rye, I got that big rye spice punch right in the front, the nice peppercorn, the cardamom, and some of the herbal mint and dill, and then leading to the nice, more bourbon-like finish. This, I get the exact opposite. I get a really nice vanilla caramel up front. I get the really nice corn and the oak coming through in the beginning, a little bit of butterscotch, and then the finish has got that nice peppery rye and really comes through and leaves a nice tingle and coating on the mouth and the tongue and leaves you wanting more.
Yeah, I agree, man. And again, surprised, the proof is a little bit higher, but the finish on this one, I think it drinks above its weight class. I think would be the easy way to say that. I think it drinks higher than 91. Is that right? 90. I look at my cheat notes.
Yeah, 91.4.
Yeah. So what drove that decision, Dan, in terms, because you guys, and we'll talk about this in the next session, but you guys barrel it. Is it 103? Is that you guys barrel it?
Yeah, it's 103 barrel entry proof. So,
okay,
we're distilling to a higher proof, of course. But with the Kentucky straight rye and the Kentucky straight bourbons, you cannot distill over 160 proof. Right. You can only use water to reduce the proof for barrel entry, and of course, 125 is that maximum barrel entry proof. We've elected to go all the way down to 103 proof for our barrel entry. This is actually probably one of the most important things that we do with in our processes. It's more expensive. We, with the additional water to reduce it to that lower barrel entry proof, it requires us to use more barrels. But again, that with that additional water, it helps dissolve those sugars more readily. But there's also, polyphenols or phenolic compounds that come from the wood. They're somewhat water soluble. That causes that burn in the whiskey. And again, we're looking for a nice smooth whiskey. So over time during the maturation process, that somewhat helps break that down and allows for that nice smooth whiskey. But yeah, it's very important. We go into 103, let's say, between 5 and 7 years again. It may come out of the barrel around 110. Sometimes you see 108, 112. That's somewhere in the average there. But if you think about it, the day of bottling, we're only putting this much water in it, where somebody that went in, let's say at 125,
right,
they come out well over 135. They're adding approximately about, through the process, about 50% more water to that bottling proof. And so again, that goes back to, why I fully believe why our whiskeys are very rich, and again, they complement in nice cocktails, because as you're making cocktails, you somehow dilute it, whether it's through ice or syrups or other ingredients. And, there's that, you're really getting the whiskey in its true essence from the barrel at that point, because, the limited water.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that 91, keep forgetting 91.4. I keep looking at my notes. So the 91.4, that was just that was like, hey, we're going to taste it. We're going to taste it at different
Yep.
proof levels, and 91.4 was just like that sweet spot for this bourbon.
Yep, that's where the team would have felt that that best represented it. Our whiskey. From the beginning of the process, like I was mentioning, we use the non-GMO corn, rye, malted barley. Our distillation system's 100% copper. We have a 32-inch diameter continuous column still to a our doubler pot still, so distilling twice. Once it's distilled and approved, we reduce it to 103 barrel entry proof. The barrels that we're using, the wood staves, are all air dried and seasoned for a minimum of 18 months.
Okay.
Which is very important during that process of the air drying and seasoning. It helps break down those tannins that impart that bitterness and astringency, green characteristics to the whiskey that we're not looking for. And then our barrels themselves are all toasted and charred, American white oak. Yeah. And that toasting process is at the very beginning of, it's the art of low temperature and time. So as they raise the barrel, they'll place it over a small oak fueled fire, and you can have different temperatures inside that barrel to break down the inner layers of the wood and expose different compounds for maximum extraction. So like a lower temperature toast profile may bring out some fruitiness and so forth, where a very high temperature toast profile, up around 800 degrees or so, could really bring out those nice mocha characteristics.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that we use. And then you come in with a char, not too heavy of a char, but because you don't want to necessarily degrade what you've toasted. So,
right,
but you come in with that char for that additional, caramelization and so forth in the barrel. And, again, we feel like we have barrels that really provide us with that maximum flavor extraction. And so once we enter the distillate into the barrels, as I mentioned, Kentucky's such a special place to age whiskey, with the changing of the seasons from hot to cold and so forth.
Right.
That heat cycling allows us. So during the summer, again, you have that natural cycling where that whiskey heats up, enters into the capillaries of the wood, and then when it cools down, it comes back out of the wood, extracting those flavors. Well, in the winter time here, when the temperature is kind of at a lull, we'll close the louvers and windows of the warehouse. We'll begin heating it up, and then causing one of those cycles, so that whiskey goes in. Then once we experience a temperature change for our specifications, then we'll shut the heat off and let it naturally cool down again, finishing that cycle. And we do that several times throughout the winter. And we feel alone that through experience and through science, that it adds probably about 6 months of maturity for each year that we're doing it. And we've got a great example of this. If you ever go to the Fort Nelson Distillery again in downtown Louisville, there's beyond the distillery, the craft distillery, there's an example of bottles at, like, I believe it's 1 month, 3 months, and so on, 2 years and 6. You'll see this beautiful change of color. I know color is just one aspect of the aging whiskey, but you'll just see that, how it just, the intensity increases. It's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I tell you what, we're at the end of round 2 here, so let's wrap this one up. Okay. But final thoughts, Matt, on the U.S. bourbon.
Another great product. This is a standard for the bourbon drinker out there. I think it holds to a lot of the really true flavors you get from a great Kentucky bourbon, and I really love the rye in it as well. That nice spicy finish.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. It's funny because I think about introductory or baseline bourbons, and I think of like Maker's Mark and Elijah Craig small batch. And this isn't anything to say that Michter's isn't of that quality, but Michter's US1 is not a bourbon that I would sit and think, in the past, oh, hey, this is a great bourbon for someone who's trying to get into bourbon or understand bourbon. But I would definitely put this up there with those. There's no doubt about it. It's definitely a solid small batch bourbon. And again, it would be a great stopping off point for someone trying to get into bourbon or just exploring to get a good understanding of what the bourbon world's all about. So very good. Great. All right, guys, let's take a break. We'll be back with more with Dan McKee, the master distiller at Michter's, in just a minute. Everybody just sit tight and we'll be right back. Hey, Bourbon Lifers. We want to take just a second and tell you a little bit about Three Chord Whiskey. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call perfectly tuned taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them all together. After each blend is completed, the Three Chord team then applies their proprietary process of pyrolysis, that's a lot to say, isn't it? Which involves heating American oak to precise temperatures to release specific flavor and aroma compounds. Then they use another proprietary method called rhythmic disruption process, and that's more than just playing music to a bunch of barrels, which integrates all of those related compounds into the blended spirit. Finally, each small batch blend of Three Chord is evaluated by a trained sensory panel to ensure an uncommon depth of flavor, character, aroma, and a perfectly tuned taste in each bottle. With their introductory blended bourbon, their Amplify Rye, Strange Collaboration, which is a Pinot Noir finished Kentucky bourbon, their 94 rated 12 bar reserve, and the brand new highly coveted 15-year Kentucky bourbon they call the Whiskey Drummer, there's a lot of options available from Three Chord. Like the feeling you get when you hear that perfect song, you'll know that the Three Chord line of whiskeys are right from the first sip. They resonate with so much flavor, you'll want an encore. Find out more about Three Chord whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final session of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Matt, how are you doing over there, man?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing so great. We've got a great guest on the show. We're having great discussion, great conversation. We've got great whiskey. Yeah. I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, I forgot to say I'm your host, Mark. I'm sure people know that, but I'm just so excited to jump back into round 3 here. I forgot to say I'm your host, Mark, and with me as always, right?
That's right.
Man. All right. So you want to tell everybody who we have with us, Matt, just in case?
Absolutely.
Just in case they're just joining us.
Just in case you skipped ahead to the third session,
why would you do that?
The final exciting conclusion. We've got Dan McKee, the master distiller at Michter's, with us, and he has really shared something special with us. So, Dan, what do we have poured up for our third drink?
Well, this one is our Michter's single barrel 10-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon. And this one.
Yeah,
it is.
To finish the evening with, you can't go wrong with this one. This is truly special. It's another example of, again, aging to a taste profile, non-age statement. It's not 10 years in a day being put in the bottle. Not to release how old it is, but we've had whiskeys in our 10 years, and even with the 10-year rye, but over 12 years.
What?
13, 14, even older throughout, the last so many years. So I think it really showcases you can, experience it in the whiskey that, again, what I like to say and what we experience, and I can't wait to hear your descriptors, but, again, just the ones that you experience right away, those big, bold, dark toffees, caramel. And what I love, as the vanilla, you still get nice vanilla, but as you're getting older, it's been in the barrel longer. Of course, now you're getting a lot more of those wood characteristics, but that charred oak. And one thing that's great about our whiskeys, and you really start to experience it in the 10-year, though, is, whether it's maple syrup, but our whiskeys are syrupy, and I like that quality. Again, that goes back to that nice mouthfeel we experience. Yep. But this one's a great.
And this one's 94.4, is that right? 94.4 proof.
Yeah, 94.4. And I think one of the things that's a lot of fun and people enjoy is doing verticals from past years, and it's actually a lot of fun seeing it even play out on Instagram and people's opinions. And it's always great when I see you can never go wrong when the next year is even better, of course.
Right.
And so hopefully people are experiencing that. But it is special, and it's again, a lot of people have their opinions of when bourbon is at its best, whether it's between 10, 12 years. But
Right.
this is you can really start to see that maturity level, and those fine qualities come out in this whiskey.
So at 10 years, then this would be what you would call the phase 2, right? So it was distilled. It wasn't a barrel that was sourced. This was distilled per your specifications by the distillery, someone here in Kentucky for you all.
Yeah, in phase 2.
Yeah, phase 2. Okay, so that makes sense. Just so we're clear on that one. So Matt, what are you picking up on this, man? On the nose, you're over there working it, man. You got your nose all the way down in that glass. I
know.
see.
I gotta peel myself back out of this thing here. I got a nice, good, toasty, smoky oak nose right up front.
Yeah,
it really comes through well. The corn is not as much corn as I got at last. I think spending a little more time in the barrel imparted a little bit more of the oak and the barrel flavors on it. But I get really good stone fruit. I get really delicate plum, like a little bit of fig, maybe even a touch of apricot. There's a little bit, something zesty, I think maybe like apricot or a little bit of the citrus with it. But a little bit of that syrup and the toffee coming through as well. And like maybe just like the slightest touch of leather. Like I think from the age of the oak coming through with that.
Yeah, I can see that. Dan, you were going to say something look like there.
Well, I was just going to say, Matt, I was waiting for you to say that slight hint of bubble gum in there, right? No.
That's Mark. Mark's,
I know, but I was waiting for you to use it. I was waiting for you.
No, I got to give it to him.
He steals all my other stuff, He might as well. My caramel and vanilla, so he steals that. I do get the oak, Matt. That was, I think, the first thing that stuck out to me compared to the small batch was that I do get more oak. It's not, I guess it's not quite, it's not as sweet. I think, we talked about with that bourbon, you're picking up that sweetness. I think you maybe said even honey with that, possibly.
Yeah, like a sweetness, honey, cornbread.
Yeah.
I think,
and to me, it's not, it doesn't come across as sweet as that on the nose. At 10 years, I'm picking up more of that oak on there. The syrup, and I don't know, Dan, it's because you said something about the syrupiness, but that's in my mind and Matt saying it. And then sure. As I was smelling it and Matt was talking, that was something that was popping out to me, was just that syrupiness of it, as well.
Sure.
So, yeah. go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, and one other great quality, and like a lot of whiskeys, but one great thing about our 10-year is that, let it open up, and it really just continues to be a beautiful whiskey. And, again, I think that's a testament of the liquid itself and the care and the quality behind it.
Yeah.
And Andrea Wilson, our master of maturation, she a lot of times likes to use the example as like a book whiskey, as you're reading a book and turn a page, take a sip, so forth. And I don't have the patience for that, but but it is a lot of fun. As we've been sitting here, I poured early, and just to now experience it, it's just seeing the different characteristics.
Yeah. Very, very nice. All right. So you talked a little bit earlier about the barrels. We talked about the char level, the toasting, and then you don't want to char too much. So you're probably looking at a lower char level, maybe 2, something like that, 3 possibly, to keep that toast coming through.
Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong on one of those numbers, but no, it's not something that we
I get
necessary.
But
discuss.
So
yeah.
do you have your barrels with one cooperage, or do you use multiple cooperages, or how do you work that?
We do use multiple. It builds that business continuity, but the great thing is we work with several great cooperages, but what's great about it is they all have to produce very consistent barrels to our specifications. They have a lot of, there's a lot of requirements. They got to be able to prove that they're adhering to it. And then all of our barrels coming in, they go through quite an extensive quality check from the team members, also in the barrel warehouse department. So, but yeah, we're very happy with our cooperages that we're using, and it's
Gotcha.
it's a testament to what they're doing out there. That's a whole nother craft. It's pretty amazing what they can do with a barrel.
So when you guys transitioned from phase 1 to phase 2, they'd purchased barrels that were already out there. They were made. They were filled up, and you really, obviously they wouldn't have had any input, I guess, on those barrels what they were like. So you transition into phase 2, where you've got someone distilling for you guys. Is that when you guys really started saying, okay, here's the barrel profile that we're wanting to use? Was that when that happened, or did you shift into your own barrel profiles in phase 3, where you all started doing your own distilling there in-house?
No, again, I don't want to speak too early before me because I wasn't there.
Sure.
But yeah, no, the toasted and charring definitely was early, and to be able to as the company evolved and really started to produce these specifications that we follow. So
Gotcha. Now, during the break, we were talking a little bit about the distillery and, being not yet being open again, and we're talking about a little bit about the impact of COVID as well. Can you just kind of talk about that? Because I don't think a lot of our listeners really get the idea or understand, what it was like to try to operate and run a business, because you guys were still running during COVID, especially here in Kentucky, because everything was shut down for so long. So.
yeah, to say the very least, it was very challenging, but we all have experienced these challenges in one way or another. Starting off with was just very important. It was very, I'm very grateful that we were able to continue to work. First and foremost, the Fort Nelson distillery, though, we ended up, like all distillers, on the visitors experience portion side of it, we did shut the distillery down. And what's really special about that, though, is all the employees there, we were able to transition them back into other work streams, so nobody was furloughed or laid off. And I think that's truly special that Michter's was able to do that, because I know not every company could do
Sure.
that. And so to be able to have that opportunity, I think it's a testament of what we're doing here. But it was extremely challenging. The main distillery is employees only and business critical, and we still operate under that. Again, not sure of the timeline of when the Fort Nelson distillery will reopen. They're taking everything into account with all the changing and so forth. Right. But it was, very difficult. At the very front of all of this was, how do you keep the employees safe and healthy? We have, followed all of the guidelines of the social distancing. I always kind of make a joke that we spent enough money on PPE, personal protection equipment, to probably have some small businesses go out of business, because again, very fortunate the masks were provided and all of that, and and also we had the opportunity to make the ethanol and give it or sell at cost to a third party to make a hand sanitizer.
Yep.
So to be a part of that effort, as so many distilleries were, nice. That was a great thing. So at the very least, it's still challenging. We have barriers up in different departments, and again, it's at the utmost, it was to keep the employees safe and healthy.
Sure. Which is, that's got to be your utmost priority, of course. To keep everybody safe and to keep everybody healthy. The good news is in Kentucky that we did, I guess it was June 11th, I think was the date, that a lot of the COVID restrictions at least from the state government level had been lifted. So life does seem to be somewhat returning back to normal here in Kentucky. So that's a good sign. So hopefully you guys will be able to get back to that. Now I know you guys are still doing your curbside. I think they're at Fort Nelson. Seems like it's so funny because I'm a member of all these bourbon clubs on Facebook. And I love it. When you get this message and it's just a 3 or 4 words that says curbside is up, and it doesn't even say Michter's. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't have to say anything. It just says curbside is up. And everybody in the group knows exactly what that means. So you guys, I mean, it's kind of neat because it seems like, I mean, Michter's has a real, almost like a cult following. I mean, have you noticed that, or is that something I'm just perceiving outside looking in?
No, I think it's accurate. I mean, again, we're very fortunate. Yes, the curbside is operation, or up and running, and that's what I'm saying about the passion that people have and towards the brand. And again, that it's a tribute to building those relationships. Like I said, the whiskey's great, and then to me, building those relationships with everybody is even better.
Sure.
So it's it is a testament of the brand, and it's doing very well, and we have everyone to thank for that.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was down there, I guess it was 2019, because I work a couple days a week over in Louisville, and I was downtown. I just decided to run down and check it out because I had not been down there, and went in and looked around downstairs, and there was nothing necessarily special out on the shelves. So I went upstairs to the bar and was having a drink, and the bartender he was talking to some guy, and he said, "Hey, you might want to run back downstairs because I think they're putting some things out." So to me, I was like, "Okay, great. I'm going to go check it out." So I go down the stairs, and sure enough, they'd put out some 10-year-old bourbon. They put out the toasted barrel rye, which that's something else. But I bought those 2 bottles, and no kidding, I paid for them and walked out. And as I was walking out, Dan, there were guys. I could see guys actually running down the street, down the sidewalk, headed to Michter's to
Sure.
buy bottles. I mean, it was just, I was like, this is kind of crazy but word gets out instantly, and people are on the move to buy your stuff. So that's got to make you feel good.
Yeah, it makes all of us feel great, and like I said, it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
To see that, and we try to be fair about it when it goes out.
Sure.
I know people try to guess the rhyme and reason behind it, but it is to just promote fairness, and yeah, again, this being my first part about with the brand and really experiencing it on the not just in the production side of it, but consumer facing part of it. It's it's great experience to witness people's passion towards our products.
Oh,
And
yeah.
again, our team here, we share this stuff with the team all the time, whether it's winning an award or an acknowledgement. We share that with the teams, so that they know what they're doing every day is really impacts the brand.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely does. There's no question about it. And the products that you're putting out are pretty amazing. There's no question about that. I was going to ask you, do you ever watch the show Billions by chance on Showtime? Is it Showtime? I think it's Showtime.
Yeah, I actually do not have it. I have watched parts of it, and I've had the opportunity to meet several. Funny story. Unfortunately, Pam Howman was not able to go to New York at a time, but there was I had to do a tasting for some of the cast and so forth. And I'll tell you what, this was several years ago. I was so scared. You go from never talking in front of really anybody outside of your presentations you do in college, and then all of a sudden, you're thrust into the limelight in front of all these stars.
Yeah.
And it it was a great experience. Everybody was so nice. In fact, again, our owner, Joe Melioco, he still makes fun of me to this day because it was kind of him and it was him and I that, did the tasting. And when I stood up, everybody, this big long table, everybody just staring at me and they could just see the fear in my eyes. And I looked at them and I didn't know what to do. And I just kind of let out this, whew, I am so nervous right now. And it broke the ice. I didn't do it intentionally. It was just my first reaction. Right. And from that moment, it was a great experience. Everybody was very, friendly, engaging, and everyone was joking, laughing, everything. And it was there's a lot of great people there.
Yeah, I'm a big Damian Lewis, the Bobby Axelrod guy. I mean, I'm a big fan of his and loved when he was in Band of Brothers, that episode on HBO. But yeah, it was funny because I remember sitting there watching it, and he and Wags were sitting there, and they go over and reach. Is it the 25 year, or I think it's the 25 or something? But it's Michter's, and it's like, hey, wait a second, I recognize that bottle. So anytime they're celebrating, Bobby or Wags will always go over and grab that bottle of Michter's and pour a celebratory drink. So that's kind of cool that you guys have been able to do that.
And Mark, I'd just like to add, I'm not sure I have time to watch the show anyways. I'm here at work.
I got you. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, now I told you during the break, we've got a group of people, we call them our Barrel Society members. And I'd ask them, if they could ask Dan McKee one question, what would it be? And there are at least 4 or 5 people that wrote back and said, single barrel program. So you all don't have that in place, but can you talk about the possibility or what the thoughts process behind that is at this point?
Yeah. This isn't going to be the answer that anybody wants to hear.
Oh, no. Yeah. I knew it right from the tone of the voice.
Breaking hearts all over the world tonight.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do not see that happening anytime soon. I will say, if someone hadn't seen or read about it, but last summer with the 50 best auction relief, where there was an auction put on by 50 Best to raise money for the global hospitality industry. Michter's contributed several different things, different packages, along with so many other great, companies. Mm-hmm. But one of them was actually a single barrel 10-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon, which I believe auctioned off for $209,000. So it was the most for, I believe, American whiskey. It was, again, the cause behind it, and for us to be a part of that was tremendous. I think we raised somewhere upward around $272,000. Again, I can't stress how much the hospitality industry is so important to our brand. And so I'm just glad that we could be a part of that to help raise money for that auction. But yeah, so that's probably the only time you're going to see that.
Okay.
I can't imagine it's going to change anytime soon.
All right. Well, all you bourbon lifers out there listening, we apologize.
We tried.
Yeah, I apologize too.
We tried our best, though. We tried, right? All right. So I'm just curious, Dan, back when you're in Northern Indiana and going to school, did you ever stop and think, one of these days I'm going to be master distiller at a place in Kentucky? I mean, did that thought ever cross your mind? Was it something you saw on your horizon or wanted to be?
Early on, no, it was definitely, it was something that actually happened. I used to, along with school, then I transitioned into construction. And for 13 years, I was doing commercial flat roofing, large projects. I worked for a great company up north. And, I traveled a lot. I was a foreman for the company. And one day I was talking to a great friend of mine that I went to high school with that now lived in Louisville. and happened to be working at Jim Beam, and we were just talking. And in fact, actually, my wife, when she answered the phone, she gave him a hard time. Just said, "Hey, when are you going to get Dan a job?" It was just purely a joke, But she had enough of me traveling,
Sure.
and you know, so we laughed about it. And then down the road later that year, he actually called and said, "Hey, they're hiring several positions. Is this something you're interested to go through the whole process?" And so I thought long and hard about it, and I thought a change was due, and so I pursued it and went through the process, that they have, and I was very fortunate to be offered the third shift distillery operator role,
Nice.
and at again, best job. I mean, being able to just physically make bourbon, whiskey,
Sure.
operating those old, the old column still, and it's just being a part of the history of that company is pretty amazing. Because again, what's very rewarding is, again, I keep talking about when you meet people, but it's also knowing that somebody's enjoying something that you produced along with the team, and working for Jim Beam. You think of the millions of people that you touch,
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
So, it was a very exciting. I mean, calling back, talking to your friends. "Oh, I work for so and so." It's like
Yeah.
they want to hear about it. In fact, enough where my wife would make fun of me. He's at it again, But yeah, it's I'll just say in the younger years, no, it wasn't. But it is funny. I mean, we drank enough of Jim Beam when I was younger. I might
You
as
might as well
well have
work for
made
him,
it.
right? Yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah, might as well
yeah.
give back.
So speaking of friends, how many friends call you up on a regular and be like, "Hey, can you get me a bottle of that 20-year-old or that 25-year-old?"
Well, it happens, and my friends have learned. No, I'm not the
That
store.
right, right. Yeah,
But hey, it's fun though. Having drinks with with my friends, and that's, again, it goes back to the being able to enjoy the laughs and so forth. And
sure.
that's one thing that's special about this industry.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So we're getting close to the end of round 3 here. So Dan, just curious, what does the future look like for Dan McKee and for Michter's?
Well, I would like to think that the future is very bright, and it's just in releases, there may be a possibility of a single barrel 10-year-old rye on the horizon. It's been a lot of fun working with again, our master of maturation, Andrea Wilson. We're positioned a little differently here at Michter's, where I see the front end, the distillation portion, and Andrea oversees the
Okay.
maturation, and then we work together to bring it. And so, just going into the warehouses, we constantly collect data on how our stocks are aging, and then just going in, seeing what we want to, sample and have for our releases is always a lot of fun. And then, our legacy series of Shanks and
Right,
Bombergers,
right.
those two expressions are outside that Michter's house style we kind of talk about, and they're innovative. We haven't settled in necessarily on a recipe. You've seen like the Bombergers. It's 108 proof Kentucky straight bourbon with some of the bourbon aged in the American white oak, and also some Chinquapin oak. So there's just a lot of fun with those products, working on some things like that. And there's still some special releases towards the end of the year. We're growing. Um, in fact, when we signed on, it was kind of comical. I'm sitting up here in our large conference room, and I'm looking out the windows, and there was a semi driving by to enter into the facility, bringing one of our new fermenters.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
nice.
So yeah, it's very exciting. The distillery has grown in phases from originally back in 2014, and then 15 during the construction, and then In 2016, we had doubled the size of the distillery, and now we're entering into that third phase of it, bringing it up to capacity. So, yeah, it's very exciting times,
Yeah.
and we're going to continue working with that local farmers in Springfield, growing some of those grains, eventually to use at the Fort Nelson distillery on the pot stills. And that's farming is not easy. I'm just going to put that out
Sure.
there. It's been a very large growing experience for me. I have actually had to fail some of our crops because of the high quality standards that we adhere to for our grains. And there's nothing like when you call your owner to tell them, yeah, we're not going to use the corn
Oh,
this year,
man.
and
Yeah.
for such and such reason. And so, but it's again, hopefully that shows everybody if we're willing to fail something that we've invested in, it just showcases our
Sure.
commitment to
Yep.
quality. So.
And I agree. And I think that definitely shows through your whiskeys as well. There's no doubt about that. Matt, speaking of which, final thoughts, or well, I guess we didn't really talk much about the the palate and the finish on this one. So we should probably do that before we close it out, right?
Yeah, I think this has been well worth the 10-year wait.
Yeah.
I'll say that. It's really, really well balanced. One of the things I've noticed that I really enjoy from a lot of older bourbons is the delicate balance between the grains, in this case, the corn, the rye, the barley, where you're not getting too much of one or the other. Everything plays really well together. It's got a good, the palate was really good with stone fruit. I picked up a little bit, something kind of zesty, a little citrus coming through, but then it really lended its way into the sweetness and the vanilla and the oak and that syrup touch at the end, like a toasted sugar or like a dark roast maple syrup at the end, but just a really long, complex finish with it too. And it's just a very complete bourbon from nose until finish. Just the whole way through, it was complex, but there was nothing about it that was really one note. It had a lot of really great balance.
I can't top that. Caramel and vanilla.
And bubblegum.
I told you, Mark, I wrote these things down for me to use during my next tasting. So
I don't blame you. Yeah. And bubblegum, right, Matt?
Bubblegum, yeah.
A little bubblegum there. So, well, Dan, we appreciate you joining us tonight. We've had a really good time and just some great stuff that we've been able to share with you here. Is there anything else before we close it out tonight that you want to add or?
Well, first of all, I want to thank anybody that's still here for the third segment. But, I just hope everybody realizes how passionate the Michter's is about making the highest quality whiskey. I truly love it. I love all aspects of it. Meeting people, just it's a great industry, great thing to be associated with. We thank everybody, and it means a lot to us. And I mean, that's just that's from the heart. So,
well, that's great.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show, and it means a lot.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. We appreciate it. Matt, anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
Hey, Dan, from your heart to our glass, thank you. It's definitely apparent.
Matt, he's such a wordsmith, Dan. I swear, not only does he have great tasting notes, but he's so creative with the words too, man.
It's true. You can taste
sure
it
when
something has been crafted so meticulously and with so much care. It's not just dumped out in a bottle, slap the label on and put out on the shelf for display and so that you can move cases. And I appreciate the time and the care that you put into it. Your passion is definitely apparent. If our listeners gather nothing from this, I really hope they take away your passion to the craft and to Michter's and to giving us the best reflection of your skill is really apparent in this product.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Very nice. And Dan, again, thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to thank our sponsors again, the Stave Restaurant out there on McCracken Pike between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve. Check them out online. Check them out on Instagram as well, the Stave Kentucky. And then also 3 Chord Bourbon. We really appreciate their sponsorship as well. And all the products they're putting out. We really enjoy those. So check them out online at threequartbourbon.com. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.